Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Red Barn Radio. I'm Brad Becker, associate producer and the host of Red Barn Radio, and I'd like to thank you one and all for tuning in to Red Barn Radio show number 501. Tonight we welcome to the Red Barn Radio stage Boogertown Gap. Ruth Barber and Keith Watson are a wife-husband duo from Sevier County, Tennessee, which includes places you might know like Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. Ruth and Keith specialize in the music that was played and sung by early pioneers and settlers of the Great Smoky Mountains and vicinity. Please welcome tonight's guest to Red Barn Radio stage, Boogertown Gap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, here's an old tune that was recorded by one of my many cousins down in Sevier County called Fly Around My Pretty Little Miss.
Peaches in the summertime, apples in the fall. If I can't have the girl I love, I'll have no love at all. Fly around my pretty little miss, fly around my daisy, fly around my pretty little miss, you almost drive me crazy. I wish I had a big fine horse, grain to feed him on. Pretty little miss to stay at home, feed him while I'm gone. Fly around my pretty little miss, fly around my daisy, fly around my pretty little miss, you almost drive me crazy. Standing in the door, her shoes and stockings in her hand, her little bare feet on the floor. Fly around my pretty little miss, fly around my daisy, fly around my pretty little miss, you always drive me crazy. Little miss is sweeter than brandy wine. There ain't no girl in this whole world who's prettier than mine. Fly around my pretty little miss, fly around my daisy, fly around my pretty little miss, you almost drive me crazy.
Tonight, Red Barn Radio welcomes the authentic old-time mountain music sound of Boogertown Gap. Ruth Barber and Keith Watson share a love of nature, culture, and history of the Great Smoky Mountains and of the music of their ancestors and descendants who lived there. Keith's family has been in the Smokies for over 200 years, I understand, and they get their name from a local community, Boogertown Gap I'm referring to, in Sevier County, where the Watsons, Keith's family, settled in the late 1800s or early 1900s. So we love getting back to old-time music on this program. It's at the heart of what we do. We're looking forward to more music and conversations with Ruth Barber and Keith Watson. They are Boogertown Gap, and welcome them back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. This next tune is an old mountain love song. In more modern times, you may have heard it sung as a lullaby, but we're going to do the old mountain version. We call it Say, Darling, Say. Hush, little darling, don't say a word. I'm gonna buy you a mockingbird. Say, darling, say. If that mockingbird don't sing, I'm gonna buy you a diamond ring. Say, darling, say. If that diamond ring turns brass, I'm gonna buy you a looking glass. Say, darling, say. If that looking glass gets broke, I'm gonna buy you a billy goat. Say, darling, say. Say, little darling, would you marry me? We'll build a house by the old oak tree. Say, darling, say. Building a house by the old oak tree. 3 little babes sitting on our knees. Say, darling, say. When our children are old and grown, they'll go off and leave us alone. Say, darling, say. They'll go off and leave us alone. 2 old coots in a happy home. Say, darling, say. You got a banjo and I got a ring. You pick a tune and I will sing. Say, darling, say. We'll make music like never's been heard. We'll put the shame on the mockingbird. Say, darling, say. Hush, little darling, don't say a word. I'm gonna buy you a mockingbird. Say, darling, say. Thank you all very much. Well, Keith's going to put up his banjo and pick up his fiddle. We're going to do an old tune that was, well, it's much older than the Civil War, but it was very common in the Civil War in these parts. It's called Bonaparte Crossing the Rhine.
It's an old English wedding march, war march, and dance tune. And I think it still is. Here's Bonaparte Crossing the Rhine. 3 times 3. Whoa.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I want to do another fiddle tune here. This is actually didn't become popular in East Tennessee until we moved there. This is really a Western North Carolina tune called "Fall on My Knees," and it's a unrequited love song. But this is one of those songs where it's not the man's fault that it didn't work out.
Dream on, sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, just listen to the words. Anyway, this is called "Fall on My Knees."
I fall on my knees and I'm begging you, please come and stand by me, little girl. Come and stand by me. I wish to the Lord that I'd never been born or died when I was young, little girl. Died when I was young. I never would have kissed your rosy red cheeks or heard that lying tongue, little girl. Heard that lying tongue. You told me more lies than there's stars in the skies. You're never gonna get to heaven when you die, little girl. You're never gonna get to heaven when you die. It's look up, look down that long, lonesome road and hang down your pretty head and cry, little girl. Hang down your pretty head and cry. I laid her in the shade, gave her every dime I made. What else can a poor boy do, little girl? What else can a poor boy do? The darkest night I ever did see was the night I left my home, little girl. The night I left my home. And I fall on my knees, I'm begging you, please come and stand by me, little girl. Come and stand by me. Thank you. We're both going to switch instruments here for just a moment.
And as Monty Python would say, and now for something completely different.
In a lot of the old mountain communities of the Appalachians, women were often not allowed to play the stringed instruments. The stringed instruments were considered to be of the devil. In fact, the fiddle was called the devil's box. But the women were not going to be left out of being in part of the music. So they sang the old ballads, and they would take everyday items and make musical instruments out of them, like the washboard, put a thimble on their fingers, tap out some rhythm, or they might take some spoons off the dinner table.
An old tune called Fisher's Hornpipe.
Thank you. Whew, need a little drink of water after that one.
Yeah. Should we ask her to sing after that workout?
Not right now.
Well, I got kind of caught up in the spoons there and kind of forgot what I was doing. But I'm here now. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to Red Barn Radio, and we have with us tonight Ruth Barber and Keith Watson, who are from Sevier County, Tennessee, and they're doing some neat stuff. We're really enjoying your music.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's fun. I thought it might be nice to begin by telling the audience something that I think will surprise them. It certainly surprised me, which is, you know, how and especially when you all came to old-time music. Could you want to start us off, Keith, or?
Sure, yeah. Well, I was actually a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, stationed in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was feeling pretty darn good about life at that point, and I had always wanted to learn how to play banjo. So I started learning to play Scruggs style, three-finger picking. So I played that for a year and kind of got used to it. Didn't thrill me a whole lot. But then a fellow bird conservator of mine came over one evening with his open-back banjo that he had made himself, I think, in Oregon when he lived out there, and his fiddle, and played us some of these really, really old tunes. And it's something that we had never really been exposed to as adults to know how significant it was with the history and the culture of the area. So, I mean, it just struck us. And from that point on, I put down my banjo picks and started learning clawhammer-style banjo, and had a hard time finding somebody to play with in Asheville because they were always busy.
You mean always performing?
Always performing, or always busy doing something, gardening or whatever. You know how the people in Asheville are. So I asked Ruth one night to why doesn't she learn to play the guitar so she can play along with me, so we can play together, so I wouldn't have any trouble. So she did. Yeah, and that's kind of how that all came about. So we just sort of immersed ourselves in that, and then we had the opportunity to move back home to Sevier County in Pittman Center. And there we just sort of kind of picked it up full time because we didn't have our jobs. We quit our jobs from Asheville, moved home, started playing music, and have been doing that pretty much for about the last 10 years. Yeah.
And so then you were how old then when you actually started picking up old-time music?
50 or 51.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of late in life, but you know, some of the
it's
the best things happen later.
Yeah, they do. It
Yeah.
is an unusual story though, and also because the two of you seem so adept at it. It's like, did you do the home DVD course, how to be an old time player and look like one and move like one and play spoons like one and so forth and so on?
Not at all.
No, I
I'm
guess
kinda
it's just
kidding,
kind
but-
of, yeah, I know, but I guess it's just kind of natural with this. Everything about this music has sort of seemed natural, which is one reason why we really enjoy it so much. It's not really an effort. It's just fun all the time.
I love the story because I remember so well when I first was turned on to old-time music, when I first heard that happening, and especially when I first participated in it. It was so powerful for me. Did you feel that experience awakened something from your family's musical past, or, Ruth?
Well, for me, it did. I grew up in a musical family. And so I knew some of these old songs, but in a very citified version.
So, for example, you mean from records, or?
No, from my grandmother.
Huh.
She was born in 1888, and she was a piano teacher at Brown's Women's College when she was a young woman. So she was very musical and made sure all of her grandchildren took piano lessons, plus one other instrument, plus could sing. And so we would always, when we were together, all the cousins, we were always singing. And so I learned some of these songs, but in a very pretty, lilting voice, rather than in the old mountain style of singing. And then I went on to college, majored in music, classical flute. So when Keith asked me to learn to play guitar, my response was, where do you blow in it? Because to me, a stringed instrument is just very foreign. But
As would be a wind one for me.
so it's been a really fun adventure, learning all of the different instruments and the histories and the stories behind the music that I had learned as a child.
So have the two of you really become students then of old time? I mean, is it part of your hobby and habit now?
Yes, it is. And we do a lot of educational programs within school systems and things like that. So we're able to share this old history with young people who have no idea about their history.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're working with young people, I'm curious to know: do you perform for them and they watch and clap and leave? What are some of the kinds of things that you do with young people in schools?
Well, we have them sing along. We teach them some small lyrics, or we take lyrics with us. We take 2 washtub basses with us, so we have 2 kids at all times playing washtub bass. And then we take some spoons and some rattles and things so they can play along and sing along, and it's just a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
We're also asking them questions as we go through our little information bit on each song that we're playing, if they know anything about this era, like, when was the Civil War, or, what is another name for the fiddle, or, what do you string a fiddle bow with, and things like that. So it's an interactive kind of setting where the kids are actively having to think about their education, because they're involved in this week-long, 2-day program called environmental education, and this is just part of the cultural part of that environment. So.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And so what age group do you find is most engaged with old-time music?
Around the 11, 12, 13.
5th, 6th grade?
6th grade, yeah.
Through 8th grade, yeah.
But once they get in the 8th grade, though, they start getting a little bit shy about participating and being a little more maybe self-conscious about participating.
Yeah, well, I think it's great that you're putting things in kids' hands, because that is really the magic of old-time music, is that you're participating with others, and you've got 5 guys in an old-time jam, playing the same guitar part, and fiddlers all playing in unison and listening to each other. It's just great. Yeah. But I think it's great that you do that. Are there any particular ways that do you feel like the old-time community is doing a good job of reaching out to young people and keeping young people involved and interested in this kind of music? Any thoughts about that?
Well,
Because I'm thinking about your travels, and when you go to festivals and whatnot, I see families bringing their kids and whatnot. Do you feel like the old-time community is doing a good job of on a larger scale of what you do in schools, which is to give kids hands-on experience?
I think they are, because I see a lot of younger kids picking up instruments these days too, and learning right behind their parents or their friends or whoever they might be with. So I think the tradition is going to be long-lived. Yeah.
What do you think are some misconceptions that, let me ask that again. What do you think are some misconceptions that people might have about old-time music? In terms of playing it. I mean, one, for instance, that I've heard is, it all sounds the same.
We have heard that, and so we try to be very conscious of not playing two tunes that are similar back to back. A change of speed, change of key, change of instrumentation, because we have been to those places where we're like, why are they playing that tune again? And it's not the same tune. So,
Yeah, right, or
yeah.
that key over and over
Right.
again. And yeah, because from a young person's standpoint, it's like, okay, I kind of get it. You know, and there's nobody dancing. I mean, the music is all dance music, or so much of it is dance music, and you line kids up on bleachers to watch it, and it's sort of like, well,
Yeah.
what's going on here? Well, it sounds really interesting to me that you're making things happen out in the schools, and that I think is really needed. Let me see. Why don't we go back to some music now, and I'll come back in a few songs after the break, and we'll talk some. I have some other questions to ask you.
Okay.
All right.
All right, if you're just jumping in, folks, you're listening to Red Barn Radio. I'm Brad Becker, the host of the program, and tonight we have with us Boogertown Gap, and they're from Sevier County, Tennessee. Welcome back, please, Boogertown Gap.
All right, thank you. Well, this song starts with a story, and it starts back before the Civil War. It's a true story, and it takes place in the mountains of western North Carolina. There's a young man, he's 17 years old, he plays the fiddle, and he's got a girlfriend, and she's an old married woman of 14. Her name is Mrs. Annie Foster Melton, and her husband is the town cobbler, and in those days, a cobbler made shoes, not pies. Well, the Civil War broke out, and this young man took off and was gone for 3 years. When he came back, he took right back up with Mrs. Annie Foster Melton where he'd left off. And she said, you know, I don't want my husband to get suspicious, so I think you ought to take up with my cousin Pearline, that's spelled Pauline. Well, he thought that was a fine idea. Well, then he met their other cousin, Laurie, and don't you know, he took up with her too.
Busy fella.
Yeah, he was. Well, one day Laurie tells Annie that she and this young man are going across the mountain to Tennessee and get married. And that's the last time anybody saw Laurie alive. Her horse came back riderless. Her body was later found in a shallow grave, wearing shoes that had been made by Mr. Melton. Well, Annie confessed to the murder. She said, I killed her, but they'll never put a rope around my pretty little neck. And she was right. They let her go. Well, Pearline, she was one of those people that liked to be in on whatever drama was going on. Do y'all know people like that? So she confessed to the murder. Well, she couldn't give them any details, so they let her go. Well, this young man knew the heat would be on him, so he took off across the mountain to Tennessee, got himself a job working on a farm. But eventually, in 1866, the law caught up with him, hauled him back to North Carolina, and put him in jail. He sat in that jail cell for 2 years, always professing his innocence. They finally hanged him in 1868, and this is our version of the song he was heard singing from his jail cell before they took him to the gallows. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. You killed little Laurie Foster, you know you're bound to die. You took her on the hillside for to make of her your wife. You took her on the hillside and there you took her life. You dug a grave 4 feet long, you dug it 3 feet deep, and rolled the cold clay over her and tromped it with your feet. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. You killed little Laurie Foster, you know you're bound to die.
Bound to die.
I know they're gonna hang me, tomorrow I'll be dead, though I never even harmed a head. one more. Reckon where I'd be if it weren't for Sheriff Grayson. I'd be in Tennessee. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. You killed little Laurie Foster. You know you're bound to die. Take my fiddle off the wall, play it all you please. For at this time tomorrow, it'll be of no use to me. At this time tomorrow, reckon where I'll be. Down in some lonesome holler, hanging from a white oak tree. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. You killed little Laurie Foster, you know you're bound to die. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. You killed little Laurie Foster, you know you're bound to die.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. Now I'm going to play a tune and sing one. Mostly I holler though. I don't do too bad on this, but this is a tune called "Patty, Won't You Get Some Good Old Cider," and most of you old timers out there probably know this tune. But in East Tennessee, this song was made popular by Charlie Acuff, a left-handed fiddler, who didn't restring his fiddle when he played it. He just turned it. It was turned upside down, so it was completely backward in every direction you can think of. But he and John Hartford recorded this tune, and made it a popular tune in East Tennessee, in the next county that adjacent to us, Blount County, called "Patty, Won't You Get Some Good Old Cider." Ready? Patty, won't you have some? Patty, won't you drink some? Patty, won't you have some good old cider? Patty, won't you have some? Patty, won't you drink some? Patty, won't you have some good old cider? You be the gray horse, I'll be the rider. We're going to Watson's to get some cider. Patty, won't you have some? Patty, won't you drink some? Patty, won't you have some good old cider? Down to the cellar, get a little wetter. Up from the cellar, feel a lot better. Patty, won't you have some? Patty, won't you drink some? Patty, won't you have some good old cider? Patty, won't you have some? Patty, won't you drink some? Patty, won't you have some good old cider? Patty, won't you have some? Patty, won't you drink some? Patty, won't you have some good old cider? Alrighty, thank you. Oh, I get to shout a little bit every now and then.
Sounds great.
Got a little drink here. Well, this next tune is an old fiddle tune from the British Isles. We don't know much history about it. That's about it. It's called Waynesboro. And the instrument I'm playing it on is called a penny whistle.
Hey, folks, we're back, and this is part 2 of Red Barn Radio's 501st show this evening. We are coming to you live from the Performance Hall at Arts Place here in the great city of Lexington, Kentucky. Please welcome back to the Red Barn stage Ruth and Keith, who call themselves Boogertown Gap.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to be here, and congratulations on your 500th show last week, and I think it's quite an honor and a privilege, or at least we're going to make it such, that we're the beginning of the next 500, right? That's great. So thank you all for having us up here. We're having a wonderful time.
Had some old friends show up here tonight we hadn't seen in years, so that was awesome. They've played this show a few times, I think. But this next tune we're going to do is an old pre-Civil War spiritual. And a lot of the old spirituals were religious songs. A lot of them were actually code about how to travel the Underground Railroad to freedom. And the first time I remember hearing this song, we were doing a Blue Plate special at WDVX in Knoxville, and the other half of the hour was a young man named Mike Ferris. And he's just an amazing musician, and he sang this song, and I went, I got to learn to sing this. So thank you, Mike Ferris. And here's our version of Mary, Don't You Weep. If I could, I surely would stand by the rock where Moses stood, singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Mary wore 3 links of chain. Every link was freedom's name. Singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you moan. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you moan. Singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. One of these nights about 12 o'clock, this old world's gonna reel and rock. Singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. When I get to heaven, gonna sing and shout. Ain't nobody there for to turn me out. Singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you moan. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you moan. A singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Moses stood on the Red Sea shore, smoting the water with the 2x4, singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Now God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water but fire next time. Singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you moan. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you moan. The singing Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Thank you. So
I think Ruth's family even operated a safe.
A safe house, yes. I had an ancestor who was an architect, as many of my ancestors were, and he built a house in Indiana that had hidden passageways and hidden rooms, and he helped a lot of folks to freedom. So we've been doing music of the Appalachians that were from our ancestors who were European and African. But there were a group of people there long before our ancestors, our European ancestors, and that was the Cherokee. And the Cherokee were people who lived in log homes. They had farms, they hunted and fished, and they had music. They had drums and rattles, but they also had a flute. A young man would make a flute, and he would create a song from his heart and play it, hoping that his girl that he had his eyes on would hear the tune, fall in love, and happily ever after sort of story. But in our family, it's not the man who plays the flute. So I'm going to do a tune for you that I composed and we've just recently recorded. It's called Cloud Dancing. Thank you.
Wow, that's really powerful, Ruth.
Thank you.
So your training with flute is classical flute?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And the transfer is pretty straightforward to playing other kinds of, blowing wind type instruments?
To some degree, as far as the being able to breathe and do the breathing part, that is. But flute, I played with music, and I don't like to play without notes in front of me. But all these other instruments, I do by ear. So that was a totally different way of learning and of performing both.
And what is what is it called when you do is it like a trill?
Yes.
Is that what that's called, a trill?
Well, that's what it's called in regular kind of music. I'm not sure what it's called in the Cherokee.
It's so critical. That sound is so much what we think of when we think of that music, is that trill that's timed in just a certain way, and it creates so much mystery in the sound. And the same with Celtic music, it's just I'm just going to use the word. Awesome. It's what a wonderful sound. And thanks for bringing that to the show tonight, because we really don't hear much of that. And it's such a key element, in Appalachian music and what came to us long ago. Love to talk, Keith, with you about about Sevier and that area. You know, I read a little bit. You know, I learned that Sevier was named after the first governor,
Right.
and that Sevier comes from the French name Xavier.
Or Sevier.
Or
Yeah,
Sevier.
he was a French Huguenot.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Or yes, right. And so, what else can you tell us? Why don't you start with Boogertown Gap?
Okay,
And
well,
tell us about that
Boogertown
place.
Gap is the name of the band, but it's based on a real community in the very geographic center of Sevier County. If you were to draw some imaginary lines between the widest corners of the county, it would cross in a community called Oldham, which was named after some Revolutionary War soldiers who received land grants from the then state of North Carolina for their efforts in the Revolutionary War. So they settled in this area in 1794 and stayed around probably 20 years. Nobody knows why they left, but they moved to eastern Indiana, and when they left their name legacy behind, Oldham. So the area is technically known as Oldham, but through lots of various stories about spooks and ghosts and goblins and the Booger Man, the area became known as Boogertown.
Oh.
Most prominently because of some soldiers being frightened during the Civil War in that area. Well, they weren't soldiers, but they were ex-soldiers. They were outliers in that community. They were avoiding the war and got frightened. And one of these men became frightened of some eyes in the bushes, and they found out the next day that it was a cow. The cow became this man's booger, and the area became known as Boogertown. That's the most widely spread story. There are others, but that's the one that's mostly used. And Boogertown Gap is actually one of those low spots on a ridge that you cross to get from one side of the mountain to the other. In the west, they're called passes, right? In the east, they're called gaps, like Cumberland Gap. Well,
Sure.
There are 5 gaps that you can travel across to get into Boogertown. But only one of them has an official name on the U.S. Geological Survey map, and that's Boogertown Gap. And it separates the community of King Branch from Oldham or Boogertown. And so we picked that name because my dad's family settled in that area sometime probably in the mid to late 1800s, and that's where he and most of his brothers and sisters were born, and he couldn't wait to get out of there. He joined the military, but every vacation that we ever took as a military family was always back to Boogertown. So I spent a lot of time growing up there, walking the roads, and when they were still gravel and like that, and going through and that's where I learned to like squirrel hunt and all kinds of good things like that. And heard some good music too from my uncle who played an old archtop guitar, but I had no idea that would some day later, be kind of the music that I would be participating in too. So
In the music that you remember your uncle playing on that old archtop, was it just simple folk music, or was he listening to the radio and emulating, players on the radio?
Well, there's no doubt that he emulated players on the radio, but I don't remember having ever heard a radio in that house. In fact, I remember a time visiting that house where my dad was born and my grandmother lived, not having indoor plumbing. So I don't know where he learned these tunes, but he always played them solo for us when we came back home on his guitar. Yeah. And we have the guitar today that belonged to him. And he never cut his fingernails, and there are nail gouge marks in the neck of the guitar that are there when he played
The
it.
frets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in the wood, in the wood of the neck.
Oh, how
Yeah.
cool.
So it's pretty neat.
What
yeah.
kind of guitar is it?
Nobody really knows.
Okay, no name.
No, it's a no name. Yeah, F top or F hole archtop guitar. Some people think it's a Regal or Harmony or something, but nobody really
Gotcha.
knows. It's a nice sounding guitar. It's,
How
it's a
neat.
beauty thing. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and so then we know, we think of Pigeon Fork and
Forge. Yeah,
thank you,
yeah.
Pigeon Forge, and the touristy places as reasons maybe why we don't want to spend time there. What are some what are some other elements of the county that are notable, or what are some other things you can tell me about the county?
Well, I think, in my mind, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. About half of the county is in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So just a few miles outside of either one of those tourist meccas like Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, you can be in some pretty remote backcountry enjoying anything that you wanted to. The music of the mountains, really, the rivers and the birds and the insects and winds.
Oh,
and
that music, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of music, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There's not much old-time music around our area. It's all been sort of transformed into a popular country and bluegrass forum there.
And would you say that people of that area, of that region, of that county have kind of a tenuous relationship with the touristy elements of the town, or are they embraced because they help the economy so much?
Well, they're embraced, most definitely. They are, but it's also tenuous at the same time, because as the tourists go, so does the economy of the county, pretty much. So, but they're fully embraced in it.
Any elements of the history of that area that you can tell me about? I know the Klan, or elements of the Klan, I think, started down in that territory, didn't they?
Well, the Klan actually started
In South Carolina.
in Middle Tennessee,
Oh, okay, it did.
by Nathan Bedford Forrest, just after the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And so, and it kind of died out for a while. But in the late 1800s, in Sevier County, there was a very puritanical group of people who wanted people to conform to their sort of moral law. And if they didn't, they were going to somehow try to punish them. And this group became known as the Whitecaps. And they wore white hoods over their heads. And if they identified anybody in the community, and in fact, the community that we live in now, Pittman Center, was one of the first episodes of these Whitecaps taking some action against a woman who they considered to be undertaking immoral activities. And so they went to her house and they basically whipped her and told her to leave the community, and if she came back that they would probably kill her. And so these were the Whitecaps. And this went on for a couple of years throughout the county. And I have to tell you that all these people were my relatives because I'm related to everybody in that county up there. And so after a while, though, this vigilante group raised the ire of a lot of other citizens who thought people had a right to do what they wanted to with their life. And these folks became known as the Bluebills. And the Bluebills and the Whitecaps used to actually have little running feuds and kill each other and stuff in ambushes and things like that. And it all, I think, culminated finally in a couple of murders that occurred along the French Broad River in the north end of the county when two men, my cousins, murdered an entire family and were caught doing it. And those were probably the last people that were hanged in Sevier County. But that pretty much ended the feud between the Bluebills and the Whitecaps. Nobody really knows why, unless they just got really tired of just killing.
So you described these groups, the Whitecaps in particular, as just a zealous religious group, more than a racist group.
Yeah. Oh no, they weren't racist at all. I don't even know if they were religious. I don't know that they were affiliated with any denomination. They had a moral law that they wanted people to live by. When wherever they got their moral source from, if it was a religion, I'm not really sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Family. Wow. You got some great stories. I'd love to hear more. Do you do some writing?
No.
You'd have, because I was just noticing, I was wondering who does all the writing on your website. You have so many neat things. You have some great writing about old time music and history and whatnot. So did you just was it a copy-paste thing, or?
No,
I mean,
no,
let's
no.
be
I,
honest.
I, I wrote that.
Yeah, well, you're a good writer.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Part of that has to do with going through graduate school, I guess, and having to write a thesis. So. Yeah, well, I mean, I enjoy writing, and when it works out well, I enjoy it even more.
I'm kind of curious to know, so I'm really thinking about this idea of you all being old-time players, especially fairly new at it, and then isolated in this place where there isn't really an old-time community. When I think of old-time music, I think the essence of it is always the sharing of tunes with other people. Do you all do a lot of sharing of tunes electronically? How do you connect with the old-time community that isn't there?
Well, there are some there. In our county and the next county, Cocke County, and over in Blount County, and down in Knoxville, there are little pockets, and we do get together and have jams. There's always, going to Asheville, getting to go and jam with some friends over there. So we learn tunes that way. We also learn from CDs, from somebody saying, here, you've got to learn this tune, and handing us the music. That happens periodically. So there's all kinds of ways that we do, but we do participate in jams.
Yeah.
There are some regular ones down there that, they might have one room that's bluegrass and one room that's old time. So you've got both going on.
Well, that gets to my next question, which is, and I want you to be very honest here. What would you consider some sort of taboos in the old time jam? Because they exist. What do you see them? How would you define a taboo in an old time jam? What kind of things make you, even personally, wince in an old time jam? I know you're very welcoming, nice people. You don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but.
Well, one thing about old time is people don't take turns doing solos. Everybody plays all the time, and you play just as loud as you want to. So there's none of the solo taking like there is in bluegrass. So that's one thing.
So if there's a hogger around, that's kind of like,
Or if they want to do tunes more modern than about 1920.
yeah, that's right, yeah. Or even fancy guitar runs, something like that.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Because guitar was really a late blooming instrument in old time music anyway.
Right.
And it wasn't fancy. It was just a backup, rhythm instrument. It wasn't, fancy note picking. So when that gets thrown in there, it's kind of like, yeah. And to us, even upright bass, because that was a much later addition. That was like a, 50s and 60s addition to the folk revival movement, getting that festival sound. So, but that's okay though. It makes the music sound really wonderful.
Yeah.
It really is
Gives it a
a
drive.
filling element. Yeah.
Especially when you have a large group, it's nice to have that pulse.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to
to
operate with.
keep the timing going for sure. Yeah.
So is your approach to old time music to play tunes authentically, as close to the way that they were originally played as possible?
For the most part. Sometimes we'll throw in a little modern lyric in something, or
Yeah, it's folk music, so
Yes. We change it a little.
we adapt the tune or the song to sort of our style and our feel of it. So it may come out on one end a little bit different than what we learned it as, or how it was written down or something. But
Yeah.
that's just our spin on it and our interpretation of the tune or the
Right.
song. Yeah.
Keeps it alive in different ways. I
Absolutely.
loved hearing Fisher's hornpipe earlier on. You did that in a way that I'd never heard before. It was really neat. I like
cool.
it.
Thank
really
you.
cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. I'm listening to some great music here on Red Barn Radio. My name is Brad Becker. I'm the host of the program, and we have with us Boogertown Gap, who are Keith Watson and Ruth Barber. They're a husband-wife duo, and if you've been listening with us to the program, you've been loving this. It's great to have old-time music back with us again. We're going to give them the stage again and let them take a few more songs out. I may have cut you off before, so be sure and include that tune also in your next set. Welcome back, folks, Boogertown Gap.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as I said earlier, the women often sang the ballads. So I'm going to do a ballad that was prevalent all over this country, all over Europe, all over Asia. It's over 600 years old, and every community had their own version, and it would be sung differently by a man than by a woman. So this is a version from the mountains of western North Carolina, and it's a conversation between a farmer and the devil. It's called The Farmer's Cursed Wife. There was an old farmer lived in Boogertown. If he ain't dead, he's still plowing the ground singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, the devil came up to the man at the plow, said, I've come to take one of your family right now, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, please don't take my eldest son, for there's a lot of work on the farm to be done, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, it ain't your sons nor your daughters I crave, but your old scolding wife, and her I'll take a singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, welcome, sweet Satan, from the bottom of my heart. I hope you and her never ever shall part, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, he stuffed her down in an old tote sack, and he looked like a peddler carrying his pack, a singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. And he carried her down to the forks of the road, said, get down, woman, you're a whale of a load, a singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Then he carried her down to the gates of hell, said, stoke up the fire, boys, roast her well, a singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. One little demon a-dragging his chain, she picked it up and smattered out his brains, a singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. 6 little demons sitting on the wall, she picked up a poker and she thrashed them all, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Then she grabbed old Satan by the hair of the head, said, I'd have done killed you if you weren't done dead, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. The littlest demon spoke up and said, you better take her back, Daddy, or we'll all be dead, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, the farmer saw him coming and he bit his tongue. He lit for the woods in a flat-out run, a-singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. And he was heard to say as he went over the hill, if Satan won't have her, I'll be darned if I will, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, here's your ma'am, and she sure is well, but I'll tell you what, she's tore up hell, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. And her children said, Lord, we must be cursed, for she went to hell and she came back worse, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Well, this just goes to show women are better than men, 'cause we can go to hell and come back again, singing ba, ba, diddle-a, ba, ba, diddle-o, diddle all day. Thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. So you can just imagine the ending would be different if a man sang that. Whoops.
So I'm going to tell you something about that tune that Ruth probably won't share with you. And that was, I think it was 3 years ago, we attended the Laurel Bloomery Fiddlers Convention, which used to be called something else. But it's the oldest Southern Appalachian Fiddlers Convention. And it used to be in Bristol, and they moved it around a little bit. Now it's in Laurel Bloomery. But we're not really contest musicians or anything like that, but we entered a contest that night. Ruth entered another contest, too. She entered the ballad singing contest, folk singing contest, and the band didn't win any awards, but Ruth won an award for singing that song at her first ever attempt at a competition. So,
Got to retune the banjo. We're going to
Yeah,
what's-
good old time fashion. Instead of slapping a capo on and trying to figure out all these different fingerings, I'm just going to retune like the old guys did, and women.
And this is called sawmill tuning. We're going to do a tune called Elsic's Farewell.
Written by a man from Kentucky, but he wrote it in West Virginia at his mother's bedside as she was dying. His name was Elzic, and he was saying farewell to his mother, so this is called Elzic's Farewell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those old haunting sawmill tunes or something else.
All right,
Okay.
he's going to tune to another key now.
Another key again.
And this is an old slave song. It's a song they sang when they were building the very first levees along the Mississippi River. And this was known as Sweet Thing. Over the years, it changed, became known as Sugar Babe. Over the decades, it changed some more, became known as White Man's Blues. And then in the 20th century, became popular again, got a new name, which we think you all probably know. But we call it Sugar Babe.
Ready?
All right.
We tune because we care. And we can.
You get a line and I'll get a pole, honey.
Honey,
You get a line and I'll get a pole, babe.
sugar babe.
You get a line and I'll get a pole. We'll go down to the crawdad hole, honey, baby mine. Y'all Got all the crawdads he can pack, honey.
it's crawdads.
Baby mine.
Must be crawdad claws.
What you gonna do when the creek runs dry, honey?
Honey,
What you gonna do when the creek runs dry, babe?
Lord, I don't know what are we gonna do.
What you gonna do when the creek runs dry? Sit on the bank and drink moonshine, honey, baby mine. What you gonna do when the meat's all gone, honey?
Honey,
What you gonna do when the meat's all gone, babe?
eat fried okra.
What you gonna do when the meat's all
Yummy.
gone? Sit on the bank and gnaw on a bone, honey, baby mine.
She sure asks a lot of questions, doesn't she?
Well, I got one more question for you, honey. What
that
you gonna
all?
do when the weather gets cold, honey?
Uh-oh.
What you gonna do when the weather gets cold, babe?
Let's snuggle up.
What you gonna do when the weather gets cold? Make like a groundhog and find you a hole.
Oh!
Baby mine.
That ain't right, is it?
You get a line and I'll get a pole, honey.
I want to snuggle.
You get a line and I'll get a pole, babe.
Snuggle, snuggle,
You
snuggle.
get a line and I'll get a pole. We'll go down to the crawdad hole, honey. Baby mine.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. I think Ruth needs to
Sorry about that.
take a drink of water there.
Having a little coughing fit.
Yeah, well, get rid of that. Okay, we're going to play another tune, and this is one of those tunes that, in the good old folk tradition, we heard a version of it, loved it, learned it, decided to change it a little bit. To fit our taste a little bit more, and to maybe just even give the melody a little bit more punch to it. But it's still the same tune. We learned this from the Carolina Chocolate Drops many years ago.
Just keep talking.
I can't talk forever. So, anyway, so this, and we learned this from them, and I've been playing it for a while, and have recently recorded it as well. So, if Ruth can sing this, are you okay now?
I hope so.
Okay.
I've been battling a cold lately, so
Okay, this.
sorry.
Okay. We'll try to get it off anyway. Cornbread and butter beans. And for those of you that know this tune, you'll recognize the changes. I think Ruth's going to try
One
it.
more time.
One more time. Okay.
The bane of every singer, dry air.
You ready now? Mm-hmm. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cornbread, butter beans, and you across the table, eating beans and loving you as long as I am able. Hoeing corn and okra too, and when the day is over, ride a mule, you crazy fool, and love again all over.
Goodbye, don't you cry, I'm going to Mississippi. Buy a dog and a big fat hog and marry blue-eyed Billy. What? Ding dong, sing a song, gonna take a trip to China. Cornbread, butter beans, and back to North Carolina. Cornbread, butter beans, and you across the table, eating beans and loving you as long as I am able. Oh, and corn and okra too, and when the day is over, ride a mule, you crazy fool, and love again all over. kissing pretty women. Whoa, man, that's the end of a terrible beginning. Cornbread, butter beans, and you across the table, eating beans and loving you as long as I am able. Oh, and corn and okra too, and when the day is over, ride you, you crazy fool, and love again all over. Education's awful, raising heck and writing checks, it ought to be unlawful. Silk clothes and pretty clothes are just a waste of money. I can see how glad you'd be to marry me, my honey. Yeah. Cornbread, butter beans, and you across the table, eating beans and loving you as long as I am able. Oh, and corn and okra too, and when the day is over, ride a mule, you crazy fool, and love again all over. One more time. Cornbread, butter beans, and you across the table, eating beans and loving you as long as I am able. Oh, and corn and okra too, and when the day is over, ride a mule, you crazy fool, and love again all over. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Boogertown for traveling from their home state of Tennessee to be with us on Red Barn tonight. Boogertown is Ruth Barber, who's been playing flute and guitar and spoons and singing beautifully, and her husband, gentle husband, Keith of the infamous Sevier County murderous outlaw clan. We thank both of you for coming up here and being with us tonight. What a great time we had.
Thank you.
We also thank those of you in the studio audience for, and those of you listening to our webcast for supporting the mission of Red Barn Radio, which is to promote, preserve, and perform the music of Kentucky and the southern states. Red Barn Radio comes to you from our home, the Performance Hall at Arts Place in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Our website has updates and further information on our guests and our program. We are on the web, of course, at redbarnradio.com. And now I'd like to ask Boogertown Gap to close us out with another tune. We've had such a great time with you all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
This is a tune called Lonesome John. Thank you.
Yeah, this is an old another one of those sawmill tunes, and I learned this version from Frank George of West Virginia, and then from John Herman of Asheville, North Carolina, and then I heard Ralph Stanley's Clinch Mountain Backstep, and I said, that sounds like the same tune. and it basically is, but I think Ralph added a measure, or maybe just one beat, and played it in a major key instead of a minor key. But nevertheless, this is one of our favorite tunes called Lonesome John.